You all got a cup of tea? Right. Now remember, we've signed off, or pretty much everybody have signed off the emergency budget. Now we've got to pay for it. And there's a $220 million asset recycling target that we have to meet. So Ross, over to you.
Yeah, Kia koutou. Yeah, good afternoon. And I'm going to approach this paper in three parts. Talk a bit over an overall update on the asset recycling programme to build on the question from His Worship, to talk about just the portfolio for a little bit, and then to seek your approval to dispose of 14 properties. As you'll have seen from your last item, achieving this budget is at risk. That risk hasn't necessarily changed since when we set the budget back in July, but we still do have a high degree of uncertainty. And to achieve $244 million in the current financial year is going to be a challenge. I believe that budget will continue to be at risk until we get clearer and crystallise the car park concession opportunity, which we include in the emergency budget. Work is progressing on that, and we'll look to come back in a confidential workshop with the committee towards the end of this calendar year. But we're sort of continuing to operate, we're continuing to build the principles that we adopted as part of the emergency budget into the way that we work, so they aren't just words on a page, so they're actually things that we actually use to guide where we're going. So what's happened in the past couple of months since you approved the budget is that properties that have been approved, they've been, work has commenced to prepare them for sale. We've been engaging with.
Sorry, who's just come back on with their mic?
Yeah. Working through with local boards and around this next tranche of properties, and also identifying what further opportunities could be brought for the committee's consideration. Included in your report today is our first sort of a status update report. We do have a property portfolio approved of over $100 million in value. I think more importantly is the top 10 properties that we do provide more detail on. There's about 80 million of value opportunity in these top 10, and these are the top 10 that I'll keep on coming back to in each update to tell you how we're progressing. In that first quarter, we have entered into unconditional sales agreements worth $21 million. So there is a start to that. They are for settlement in quarter 4 of this financial year. As I say, work has continued on the car parking concession. We've done some initial market sounding to understand if there's a nature of a transaction. I had done a bit of market research around the competitors within the city centre. A key element on the value or the value opportunity of that will come back to, how unencumbered we want to make that transaction, or what conditionality we make that transaction. And that's about getting the balance between short stay and long stay car parking. But as I say, we'll come back and workshop that with the committee. We also have a couple of prepaid lease opportunities that we're working through, but we're not ready to come and talk to councillors about that yet. The fleet optimisation, I will cover that off in the monthly updates around asset recycling. But overall, we've got a target of reducing the vehicle fleet by 180 vehicles, and to date 35 have been sold, with another 25 sitting at Turner's waiting to go through their auction process. When the committee and then the governing body approved the asset recycling, or the emergency budget and the asset recycling component, elected members wanted to increase their confidence in the process, and you requested that the Audit and Risk Committee actually review the property rationalisation process. We had that Audit and Risk Committee meeting on Tuesday evening, and if I'm honest, there were some very challenging and thought-provoking questions posed by the members of that committee. They asked about how we're going to assess our counterparty and concentration risk, particularly around the car park concession, to make sure that we actually don't put effectively all our eggs in one basket. They asked how we were preparing assets for sale and actually managing the trade-off between short-term cash in the door and long-term value. And I did advise that committee, so I now advise you, there is that healthy tension. And, you know, working with Panuku, you know, they are saying we want to get development outcomes from these pieces of property, and we're saying we need to get cash in the door. So, you know, there is that tension, but, you know, Kevin and I had a very good meeting last Friday with David Rankin and Mary and a couple of others from Panuku, just to talk about those trade-offs and how we're going to navigate our way through them. The Audit Committee also asked about the compounding risk elements. You know, COVID provides a lot of uncertainty for us, and actually, as we move through, the market conditions may change, and to make sure we're monitoring those market conditions, so actually that we're still going to maximise the value. They also made comment on our principles, and transparency is one of the principles that we actually want to adopt, and, you know, to provide more information, which we're trying to do this report. They just cautioned around actually to make sure that we don't prejudice either our legal or commercial or our risk positions by putting too much stuff into the public arena too soon. But overall, the Audit Committee resolved that the property rationalisation approach was reasonable, had effective controls in place to ensure that risks were being appropriately managed. So the second part is just around portfolio movements. You know, the property rationalisation is going to be dynamic. We're going to bring properties in and we're going to investigate opportunities and say these no longer are valid candidates. And we're working on a number of new opportunities that we'll bring into that portfolio over the next month. We've added one property which is on the to be considered today, and also we've also identified some properties for a number of reasons which should no longer, staff no longer believe should be considered for disposal. The reasons for them are there may be flooding impacts, not necessarily on that property, but the downstream impacts should be developed on that site. Staff have done a reassessment of a piece of open space in the Howick ward and actually said, you know, yes, I think they think that that could be used in a different way. So what I'm saying is just because they're on the list doesn't mean they will actually bring them to the committee or take them through to a disposal decision. So we'll just move to the third part of what I was going to talk about, and that is around approval of the 14 properties in the paper today. This is the hard bit. Okay. So where we're up to, so first point I suppose I just want to mention is across these 14 properties we're at various stages of engagement and discussion with Mana Whenua. We heard this morning from Hayden Solomon, the Chief Executive of Ngāti Po, and their position has changed from that which is reflected in the report today. So, you know, the situation with Waiheke is fluid, but you heard a very positive discussion this morning. You know, so my role in this asset recycling is to gather the advice across the council group and then trying to summarise that advice and provide it to you, so that you get that professional advice and you balance that advice with the views and preferences of local boards and obviously your own perspectives and the drivers for us to achieve the budget. You've got to remember that disposing of these properties allows you to reinvest in the priorities of council. We had a workshop, and if you keep on inviting me back, I'm going to keep on coming back to the example I gave in the workshop yesterday. A decision to continue to own asset A is a decision not to invest in project B. If you had the cash, would you invest in asset A or would you invest in project B? That's the decision that you're making when you're actually deciding the trade-off decisions around property disposal. There are 14 properties which are more appropriately identified at section 30 or attachment 2 in your paper, and I would just like to just briefly, if I may, Chair, just go through those 14 properties for the committee. The first one is in Albert Eden, and it is a commercially leased premise. It has been a commercially leased premise since it was acquired by the former Borough Council in 1984. So currently the community are receiving no benefit from that property. There has been a number of uses considered for the property, and you heard from the local board chair this morning around in 2016 it came to committee and there was a resolution passed asking for a needs assessment to be done. I can find no one in council who has done that needs assessment, but what I do know is that the advice from community facilities in relation to that property is it is not fit for community purposes. The reason they say it's not fit for community purposes is twofold. One, for our new community facilities, we're looking for facilities that can do multi-use, that could do more than one thing, and adaptable and flexible. And secondly, they're looking for premises that have the lowest possible operating cost. And communities facilities advice, as it was in 2016 in respect to that property, is they don't believe it is a suitable premise for community leasing. You heard from the chair of the local board this morning, and the local board do not support the disposal of that property. The next property is in Howick, or the next 12, I think 10 or 12 are in Howick. This is a fascinating property. The former Manico City Council sold the air rights above this property. The owner's about to develop above the piece of land. It is a piece of scrub land, and it makes more sense to dispose of it. The local board supported that. The next one again is another piece of undeveloped space in Howick local board area. We're looking to expand a walkway that cuts through that space, but then there's a balance of property that's available for disposal. Again, the Howick local board supported that disposal. The next site actually features as the new site that we've brought into the portfolio, and is also the site that's in your top 10, and that's a piece of land in Flatbush. That piece of land was previously acquired to be the aquatic centre in Flatbush, but the local board have elected to actually put the aquatic centre, once it's built in future years, in part of Sir Barry Curtis Park, so that piece of property is no longer needed. The local board again supported the disposal of that. They did, however, request that the proceeds would be reinvested into their aquatic centre. There's a car park adjacent to a reserve at 116 Reeves Road. Interesting, when we did site visits with the Howick local board, the local businesses have put up signs saying no parking on the council car park, but we don't believe that car park is required for access to the nearby reserve, and that's due to the number of car park spaces that are also in the locality. The Howick local board supported that, but they did note some concern about the loss of car park space. But as noted, it was being used by the business rather than people visiting the reserve. The next property again in Howick is another interesting one for us, in that it's land adjacent to a petrol station. The petrol station's petrol tanks actually sit under this piece of land. We have no agreement with the petrol station owner for that to actually occur, and where the liabilities sit in that property. And we're looking to try and tidy that up and work with the petrol station owner to tidy that up and package it all together. And again, the Howick local board supported that. 60 Vincent Street is an at-grade car park, again in Howick. This car park has previously been considered by the committee, and at that time the local board had expressed some concerns around egress into the car park, just because of its location and its location of adjacent buildings. The local board now support the disposal of that piece of land, but note that actually consideration needs to be taken for safe traffic flows for any future development. The next 4 properties were not supported by the Howick local board, and they all have similar characteristics in that they also have reserve status under the Reserves Act. All of these properties, though, the next 4 are all what I'd call undeveloped open space. By that I mean is they are green pieces of land which we cut the grass on, but there is no other amenities that have been provided. The first one, 40-foot lane, is at the end of a one-way street, and it has limited access. There's a lane off to the north, but actually if you didn't live in that street or overlooked, you wouldn't know that reserve is there. There are another 3 reserves within walking distance of that 40-foot lane piece of land. Aberfeldy Avenue, again, is another undeveloped piece of open space. When you actually look on a map, it's about 100 metres away from Lloyd Elsmore Park. And for those who know out east, Lloyd Elsmore Park is a significant piece of development with multiple sports codes, informal and formal recreation area. And again, this is just a piece of green space that we cut the grass on, which is similar to Golfland Drive. Again, an undeveloped piece of green space. Is next door to a Transpower power station, so the power lines come into that location and then go out again. And so there's quite a lot of green space around there as well. And the last one's there are a lot of fascinating sites as you get into this around the city, to be honest. And you've got this site here where you have part as a reserve, part is an unformed legal road, and part is just a piece of green space. It's all green space, it all looks the same. But yeah, there is actually a legal road that's never been formed through the middle of that space. But those last four properties, those.
Sorry.
Yeah. So those last four properties, the Howard Local Board did not support their disposal and thought they should be retained for community use.
Sorry, my phone doesn't like my computer.
Okay.
Hey, Ross.
That's
my
okay.
fault.
So next one's a property in Puketapapa, and this property is in the middle of an industrial area. Across the road from the property is actually a reserve that we want to retain. There are a number of mature trees on this site, and the local board support the disposal but noted their concern about the loss of the mature trees. The Tree Council have also written to us, again noting the loss of mature trees. But the site has encroachment issues and easements over it, and actually is better suited for industrial use. We heard this morning from both the local board and three parties to this property in Waiheke, and I note that the chair has put a resolution up there in respect of actually allowing the local board some time to investigate further, or these parties to investigate further. Then the point from this morning's discussion is all of those parties are interested in purchasing the site. So the committee would still have to make a decision to sell the property. That site has been a works depot for over 50 years. There may be contamination issues of the land. Council also own another adjoining site that backs onto it, which may be part of a future development if you allow those parties some time to consider this further. And then the last site is in West Coast Road, and you heard from Chair Presland this morning when he talked about the local board's desire. What you have in West Coast Road is you have a disused landfill, you have a reasonable 10,000, I won't give a mass right, so I'll just leave a mass, 10,000 square metres you've got there. Approximately half of that is to be retained as neighbourhood reserve, as proposed to be retained as neighbourhood reserve. And Chair Presland put up some maps this morning, and that was to maintain the east-west link. The other part, is zoned for intensive housing and could be sold for housing. And what happened with that property is that staff engaged with the local board going back almost 3 years. After initial discussions, the area was changed from the initial point of view, and now you have staff saying, well, actually, we think this is the optimum area, about 5,500 square metres for this neighbourhood reserve. The local board would like to retain all of the area. So that's the sort of the overview of these properties. And I'll just wrap up now, because managing this portfolio is dynamic. We will come. Well, I will speak to, if you invite me back. That was my line earlier. I'll come and speak to you regularly. We do have a group of properties that we originally signalled in Whangaparoa, which we have not brought forward yet because there's some issues working through with Auckland Transport and the two ward councillors. But depending on where we resolve that, they may come back in October. But I would hope to come back and talk to you again in November to give you a more substantive update on how we're progressing. What we'll also be able to do in November is to be able to give more certainty or more information around the car park opportunity and just where that is heading. And then we'll be able to really assess the risk that His Worship raised around this budget, and actually where do we think that's going to go, and then, is there any other levers that we may need to pull? So thank you, Chair, and thank you.
And thank you, Ross, and I acknowledge the huge amount of work that you've done putting this paper together. My first question, Patai, is to the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Cashmore.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Ross, and thank you for the thoroughness of the work you put into here, sir. Two very quick questions. The amount that was done in the emergency budget for saving through property disbursements is 244 million, is that correct?
That's correct.
Second question concerns...
I beg your pardon, Deputy Mayor. 244 from asset recycling, of which, this... We haven't banged down 50-50 between the two, but we reckon at least more than half to 60% needs to come from property.
Okay, thank you. So it's a very real number. It's counted into our budgets. Just look at these individual properties. We have a potential solution here for the Waiheke one, which is good, negotiated with the local board and the parties over the past few days. One of the ones when I went on you with that tour with the Howick local board, there were some questions about was the 440 where I think it was Councillor Stewart said that she had been advised that it was not to be put on the market. The council saw no reason to put it on the market some years ago. Has that been checked out?
Yes, so thank you for the question. I mean, Councillor Stewart and I have discussed this property a little bit. It's the property at 40-foot Lane, and Councillor Stewart had been advised, not quite sure by whom, that it was not going to be progressed. So we just haven't been able to join the dots on that one. Sorry.
And the contention around the West Coast Road Glen Eden property about the connections back towards the station and the west, that's been resolved by retaining the 5,000 square metres?
Yeah, through the chair, the retention of that land allows the east-west link. The link through to West Coast Road would be going out into the neighbouring. I'm now looking to Councillor Henderson. Is it Glenfern? Yeah, going not yet. Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Good to have a bit of extra local knowledge. Yeah. Is that all,
Thanks,
Councillor
Madam Chair. That's my lot.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Chair, your question.
Thanks, Chair. I'm sure you can guess what my question is going to be. We've heard from Chair Preston this morning around the West Coast Road property, and that they feel that they need to retain the site for a Greenways link. Why can't we do both? Can we retain part of that site going northwards so that you're linking people through to the main street? Is that possible? Simply because there's a lot of people feeding back through this, and I talked to the bowling club. They've since approached me since the workshop we've had around this, and discussed just the amount of people that actually do walk northwards. There's a lot of people.
Yeah. Thank you. Through the chair, I mean, I've looked back at the sort of rationalisation reports that were done, and that was one of the points considered, but a large part was the optimum size for a neighbourhood park vis-a-vis the whole site, and actually how could you make it all work? I mean, the other alternative is, should you proceed to disposal, it may be in any developer's interest to actually make the right connections, but obviously council then would have lost control of that.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. I wonder whether we can continue to work on that point or not. Let me think about that. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, I mean, it's a distinct possibility that, as you say, the developer would see it as an advantage to do it in the first place. So, Ross is listening.
If I may add as well, the other thing is about keeping that West Coast Road link. I apologise to others who, obviously Councillor Henderson and I probably got
West days.
Yeah, but is if you removed that link or kept it, is then around the access way to any development. So it was around that, trying to split the site and make the site usable. both as a park and as a potential development opportunity.
Got that, right, thank you. All right, Councillor Cooper. Are you there?
Saying, I think the question's partly answered by D, but I think I wouldn't have thought it'd be the Waiheke Local Board that'll be completing investigations. Wouldn't it be working with Panuku to do that? It's not really their expertise, but their local expertise would be really helpful to Panuku while they were working through those options with potential purchasers, would it not? Because it says that the local board are going to report back. I would have thought Panuku would be reporting back about it alongside the local board. There's just a big onus on Waiheke Local Board to do all that, that's all.
Through the chair, if I could just start on that. I mean, and certainly Chair Handley this morning, did say that she saw the local board's role was to try and bring those three parties together to see if they could come up with a placemaking solution for Ostend and Waitiki Island. So certainly the local board do see that they actually have a role to play in the short term to see if there is an opportunity there to actually improve Ostend.
Councillor
Yes,
Cooper,
I'm
it's
not
my
saying they wouldn't be involved. I'm saying I think it would make sense to work with Panuku because there's a whole lot of issues around the site, and just racing off and saying let's all do this together without working with Panuku, that is my concern. I think you're going to get a better outcome. But anyway, so I'm just questioning: is it Waiheke Local Board that's going to report back? Are they going to write the report and all of that, or what's going to happen? That's what I'm asking. Because I think it needs to be a good process, and the local board they've got all their local knowledge, but the whole issue around Panuku support's really important that they work together.
So, Councillor Cooper, my understanding is that the local board wanted to do a business case in the first place, and this was the sort of compromise resolution. I'm going to ask Councillor Cashmore to help me answer this because he was part of this resolution.
Yeah,
but
I just don't understand it.
Okay, Councillor Cashmore, are you there?
Indeed, Madam Chair. The answer is simply, of course, Panuku would be involved, as would Ross and the properties team, to help and guide the Waiheke Local Board through this, because they have the expertise. And the Waiheke Local Board, Kath and her team would obviously go back to Panuku and the council's property team to get the expert knowledge and understandings and costs around it. So it goes without saying, I would suggest.
That clarifies it for me. And my other question is, I think, Ross, you alluded to properties taken off the earlier list from the emergency budget because of flooding, and you talked about Howick, but I just want to say thank you for listening to the local community about the two properties in the Waitakere Ranges Local Board that are prone to huge flooding and taking on board that new information.
Yeah, thank you. And for the committee, attachment E to your report gives you all the properties that were listed in the emergency budget and what we see the current status of those properties are, just to provide you regular updates of how they are progressing.
Which ones are going forward and which aren't? Yes, thank you. Just while I've got you, Councillor Cashmore, you're moving this, right, and your worship seconding, is that correct?
I'm happy to move, yes.
Great, thank you. Right, thank you. Next question I have, Patai, for Member Blair.
Aroha mai, I have trouble unmuting all the time. My question is, are we happy with the words Ngāti Paoa being included in there instead of mana whenua? Because they are the mana whenua of that land, not anyone else, in the amended resolution. D.
Councillor Cashmore? Because that's correct. They came and spoke to us this morning.
Yeah. So,
Councillor Cashmore, are you happy with that?
Yeah, I don't see I don't think that both meanings the same thing, quite frankly.
Bear with us.
I think this one makes it more explicit. Kia ora. Thank you, Councillor Cashmore.
Kia ora, thank you. Right, moving on. Councillor Stewart.
Thanks. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, councillor.
It's good. Okay. Right. Well, first of all, I want to thank the Howick Local Board because I think they've actually come up with a lot of assets for the emergency budget. They've recommended quite a few to be sold, and as you can see, most of them actually come from Howick. And you have to also remember that in the emergency budget, the Howick Local Board have also come up with defensible, the old library building and Moore Street. So they're very big budget items, all coming from Howick. And I'd like to also thank the Howick Local Board for the work that they've put in. I think they've done a really good job in these, the circumstances of these times of COVID-19. I want to support all those recommendations of the Howick Local Board, and I'd also like to support the Howick Local Board for those that they don't want to sell, and that is the 40-foot. That's Aberfeldy, Golflands and Aspiring. And I'm just hoping that councillors will take into consideration that Howick have actually come up with an awful lot of properties for this emergency budget. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor. And you're noting against the sale of 8, 9, 10 and 11 will be made. Thank you. Councillor Young.
Thank you.
Tina Kui, Madam Chair, you will notice most of the property that we are recycling today are in the Howick ward, as the Councillor Stu just mentioned. I would like to acknowledge the former Manuka City Council for its high provision of the open space. A few months ago, Aucklanders and the Councillor agree the asset recycling is necessary to respond to the crisis we face right now. I still believe this is true for the short term. The property we are disposing of today are most non-strategic and supplies to requirement. However, this cannot be sustainable as a long-term solution. I support the majority of the property disposals, but would like to recall my opposition to the disposal of the number 8 to number 11, same as the Councillor Stu. These properties are important to the community, and I thank the Howick Local Board for their advocacy. Looking ahead, the contribution from the people of Eastern Auckland cannot be forgotten when it comes to the future decision of the investment. This is difficulty, but I'm looking to the futures. Kia ora, Madam Chair.
Kia ora, and thank you for that. And your noting against has been made. Thank you. Councillor Casey.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I have sent you through an amendment. If you'd like to put it up, I'll talk to it. It'll be an E.
Okay, hold on. Just hold the line, caller.
I think it may be the Finance Committee rather than the governing body that had the resolutions. Ross could confirm that.
I don't understand the question.
It was for the work to be done, remember, on
It came
Street?
from Finance and Performance Committee in
Finance
2016.
and Performance. So if we change governing body to Finance and Performance Committee.
Right.
Thank you.
So that you're asking, hold on, this is an amendment, isn't it? Because we've...
Yep.
Yeah. So it's been moved and seconded as an amendment.
Right. I'd like to speak to it, if I may.
Okay.
You heard from Margie Watson this morning, and I'll just go over one or two things that Margie said and add a few bits of my own. The local board deserves better than this. The last time this property came before us, it was in 2016. Concerns were expressed about the division of opinion between the local board that was then chaired by Peter Haynes and the Deputy Chair was Glenda Fryer. There was a division of opinion between the board and staff with regard to the need for community space and community facilities. To resolve that issue, the Finance and Performance Committee resolved to do a needs assessment. We just heard from Ross this morning that that was never done. But I raised this when this property came up again in the workshop. I said that is an issue. If it hasn't been done, then it needs to be done. It's the least we can do. I think if we go ahead and sell this property under the feet of the new board, which is now chaired by Margie Watson and deputy chaired by Lee Corrick, both times unanimous approval from the board to retain it as a community space. They have great ideas for that space, and one of those great ideas is a seniors hub. That great idea has not gone away. So when you have a local board, as you heard this morning, say that people are clamouring for community space, and we have a staff report that says otherwise, I have to say, well, where is the evidence in support? That evidence would come through a needs assessment. Why hasn't it been done? I have no idea. Ross didn't offer any comment on that. So I'm just looking back to say, when you have a property that the local board want to keep and think it's an essential community place, and we have no evidence in support of the officer recommendations, then the least we can do for the board is to carry that out. Now, we heard from Margie this morning that the local strategic broker has already engaged in some form of needs assessment. I'd like to know what that is. But more than that, the local board deserve to be consulted. And what we heard this morning is that Margie has not talked to anybody about that property since 2016. So that is very disappointing to me, especially because I made this speech, just a few weeks ago. Nothing has happened in the interim period. So the local board want to be approached. They want to be involved. We delegate responsibility for local placemaking to them. They are asking for our help. And I think the least we can do is take it off the table until this has been sorted. I thought that's actually what we were going to do at the workshop. So I was very surprised to see it come back and come back with nothing additional. What we are seeing today is what was seen back in 2016. There is nothing new. Perhaps the government valuation has gone up, but there is nothing new in that report. So, councillors, I really want your support to give this local board a chance, or to actually give us a chance to put right the resolutions of the Finance and Performance Committee of 2016 that said we should do a needs assessment on this property. Let's do it. If it's already started, let's finish it. But we actually do owe it to the local board to do this. Thank you very much for your support.
Okay, thank you, councillor. You have a seconder as well, but any questions then further to this amendment? Right, but any further questions on this site? Yes, you do, councillor?
Thank you. Well, it's fair to give Ross an opportunity. The suggestion that things haven't happened as anticipated, Ross, is it just a resourcing issue, or?
Point of order, Madam Chair. Point of order, Madam Chair.
Sorry, point of order, yes, councillor.
I thought we were actually now discussing the amendment. And questions were over, that's why I checked at the beginning.
So, questions on this amendment, yes. All right?
Yeah, the standing orders allow a member to ask a question at any time.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just asking a question.
Right. So councillor,
I'm
ask your question.
Thank you. I'm just asking Ross, is there, do you have any feedback as to why things maybe weren't closed off here, if they haven't been closed off? Are there some barriers? Is there something you need to tell us?
Yeah, through the chair. No, as I said earlier, I've not been able to ascertain who, if anyone, picked up the previous resolution of the Finance and Performance Committee. But the advice from the Community Facilities team was that they didn't deem the building to be suitable. And I think there's two elements here. Is what is the community need, and then what is the solution for the community need. And it's to make sure we get the two things come together, so that, you know, so what community facilities are telling me is that we want facilities that meet multi-purposes for the community and can keep operating costs as low as possible.
So what you're saying is there's a call for a needs assessment, but the building itself may not actually suit a community need, like the structure itself, as opposed to the building is assumed to be something that could accommodate a community need, and therefore you automatically undertake a needs assessment. But your team is questioning the physical state or configuration of the building to perform a community need.
Through the chair, correct. That is the advice I was given. Yes, that the building was not suitable for community need, as a community facility.
Was that communicated to the board? Do you know?
I can't, sorry, through chair, I can't actually answer that question. Sorry, I don't know.
Right. Just for clarification, I have the resolution from 2016, which was request that the Chief Executive to initiate a review to determine the need for and possible location of a suitable community hub for senior and other community groups involving community facilities, and seeking advice from Seniors Advisory Panel. And the second resolution was agree that the decision on the future of Tuwaramu Street, Balmoral, be deferred until the end of 2016, but there's been nothing since. Question from Councillor Dalton.
Thanks, Chair. Just checking, I'm just having a look at the local board plan. Is it, and I can't see it, I'm wondering if in their work plan, if there is a piece of work around the business plan that they want to do, or the scoping, or that piece of work, because I don't imagine the organisation would, I don't imagine council would be paying for it, or the regional budget would be paying for it. So is it in the Albert Eden local board plan to pursue this business case or scoping exercise?
Do you know the answer to that, Ross?
Yeah, through the chair, no, I don't know the answer to that question. Sorry, councillor.
Margie, are you online by any chance? No. No, she's not. Okay. Second question, any other questions? So, Councillor Mulholland.
Kia ora, thank you. I'll be supporting this amendment, but my question was it correct, through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Casey, that you said all board members supported this amendment?
Yeah, that's correct. It's unanimous in 2016 yes. And unanimous recently.
Thank you. I just wanted to confirm what I thought was correct. Thank you very much, Councillor Casey, and I will be supporting this. Kia ora.
Thank you. Councillor Cashmore. Your comment.
Mine's a comment, Madam Chair. Is that okay?
Oh, sorry. Any more questions?
I've got a question there, Chair.
Yes. Sorry, Councillor Filipina. Yes, question. And then who was that? Sorry? Calling out?
Councillor Fletcher.
Oh, sorry. So do Filipina, then Fletcher. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, sorry. Yeah, look, I'll go so you won't waste time. Look, Ross, just a question to you. If this goes through, how much time, this may be a question to you or and to Councillor Casey, how much time would you think would be required to fulfil those obligations as per the recommendation in 2016?
Through the chair, sorry, Councillor, I can't give you a definitive answer, but you know, I can come back very in short nature to actually work out how long that would take.
Just a supplementary, I mean, would it take 3 months, 6 months, a year?
Through the chair, I would suggest closer to 3 months.
Okay, thank you. And when after Councillor Fletcher and when I'm in line for comment, please, Chair.
Right, Councillor Alf, back in March 2016, the council was given to the end of the year to complete the needs analysis, so that's about 8 months.
No, I heard that one, Councillor Casey. I just wanted to sort of see if this went through, how long the staff will then take in regards to your amendment.
So this could be done by the end of the year? Yes, great, thank you. Councillor Fletcher.
Thank you. My question relates, from what I understand, is the local board voted unanimously. Kathy is quite correct, but there was a recognition of the difficulties associated with this site. And I'd just like clarification around whether it was for this particular site or with the idea of holding the site so a land exchange could take place for another site. So if we're going to take time and spend the 3 months and explore this, could we get clarity around whether it would be for this site or a site that could be achieved on a land exchange?
Through the chair, I mean, yeah, both those options are possible. The right approach for our needs assessment would be to actually, assess if there is a gap in community need, and that could be in segmented or it could be in general, and then to work out what's the best solution to meet that gap in community need, whether it would be this property or whether it could be another property, and then whether there was budget to actually achieve what needed to be done.
So, are you happy with that, Councillor?
Yes, and I was just going to pose a question to Councillor Casey, and that was whether it would be for the purposes of finding a community hub for the elderly, or whether it was for a town square. Just wanted some further refinement on what the understanding from the local board might be.
Hi, you'll see from the report, Councillor Fletcher, that there's various purposes being mooted for that community space. So all of the above, really.
Okay, thank you.
Right. So we've ascertained that this could be done by the end of the year. Is that correct, Ross? By February? By February 2021. Okay. So do I have any comments starting with Councillor Walker, for the amendment?
So I want to support Councillor Casey and Councillor Collins around this. If you look at this building, it's a wonderful fit for the community. It's human scale, it's got character. As far as a building that was suitable for seniors, I would suggest it is immensely suitable. It's not far off the ground, it's got a ramp, you frankly don't have much to do with it. I have huge concerns about this issue about running cost. This is not a leaky building, it is solid. This building will be there in another 100 years. Now, I would suggest if we ask that question over much of our building stock that we own, the answer would be no. So this building is solid, it's easy to repair. I'm sure people in the community could repair it. So I have a real question around this issue of running cost. Let's have some more data about that, if that is the reason that we're not going to be taking various buildings on, because on that basis we would dispense with a lot of our stock. As far as multi-use is concerned, I would suggest this building is capable of multi-use. It has a number of rooms. It was a house at one point and it's been customised for an early childhood centre. The small rooms enable any number of groups to use this. Quite obviously the board is interested in older people, but frankly you're not going to get too much in the way of multi-use out of a relatively small compact house. So applying multi-use as some reason not to do something because it's some kind of principle, in my view, is over the top. Multi-use is often not applicable. What is important is that it receives use, and if it receives a maximum quantity of use because it is suited to the purpose, then surely that is the critical consideration, that is utilisation rather than multi-use. So I would suggest that councillors, if they want to, go and check this site out, because it is fit for purpose. And I back the local board and Councillor Casey and Collins here.
Thank you, councillor. Just remember that the ramps and some of the other assets attached to that building do not belong to council. They belong to the leasee, which is the childcare centre.
Not expensive to replace, Madam Chair, I can assure you.
Any other is that the list for Councillor Cashmore? You're next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I won't be supporting the amendment for the simple reason that this facility currently has a use. It has done so for quite some time, and it's a childcare centre. So to repurpose it away from it means the childcare centre has to relocate and find somewhere else, which is often challenging in an urban built-up environment. The second point is it is an older building, and I know full too well the cost of upkeep for older buildings. Twice now, community facilities have come before us in workshops and said they do not believe this site to be fit for purpose for a communal meeting space, and one especially for older people. So, Madam Chair, I think this is a case in point where the local board want to promote meeting space for its different groups in its community, whether it be ethnic or aged or whatever. There must be other opportunities. This space is already occupied. The people who are occupying are keen to purchase it, I understand. It's a one we should move forward on.
Thank you, councillor. Councillor Filipaina.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, as you know, and I speak for everybody around, well, I can't say around the table because I'm not there, but for all those at the committee meeting, that process is so important. And for me, the fact that this hasn't been fulfilled from the from 2016 concerns me. That has to be righted. Firstly, I don't take any credence from any of the members on this committee around what can be fixed or not. I will always take the advice from the staff in regards to that. So my particular issue is around 2016, and it should be completed. And Ross, I would humbly suggest that February 2021 may be too far out if the staff could, and I know they're all under pressure as well as those on this committee and others, that it gets done before February 2021. So the process is important to all of us and to me in particular, so I will be supporting this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, councillor. Councillor Fletcher.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm a little like Councillor Filipaina here insofar as I'm a little concerned about process. In discussing this matter, I've had the opportunity to talk to Member Langton and to the board and to the Deputy Chair. And there does seem to be an agreement that the site should be retained, but it's really more for the purpose, whether it's a land exchange, whether it's the suitability of the site for other purposes. I think that we would do well actually to get clarity from the local board on that and for the work to be undertaken by the officers. If it is in Balmoral the need for a town square, then we need to understand that. But I do know how hard it is to acquire land in that area and to dispose of it without actually having the appropriate paper trail on this would leave me really uncomfortable. So while I will be the first to try and encourage the rates, when we're going into the long-term plan to be kept at a reasonable level, I don't want to be accused of NIMBYism, and I'm not prepared to contemplate sales of assets in my own ward. I don't believe that all of the work that should have been undertaken on this has been done. And I hope that we can get that work done, and if it comes back in February, that we will have absolute clarity. And I would prefer that there be a member. I don't know whether Councillor member Lee Corrick is still online. I know she was there a little while back, but it would have been quite good to have had the local board speak to it. So, Madam Chair, I would say at this stage we should wait until February until we have that work undertaken.
Thank you, Councillor. Do we have anyone wanting to speak against, other than Your Worship?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Look, I want councillors, every councillor, to think long and hard about this. We've just come through a budget process. We decided by overwhelming majority that we would fund the huge hole in our income by the sale of $244 million worth of surplus properties, plus the bus, including the bus concessions. We've already just dealt with a paper that said that this target is at risk. Now, I understand any ward councillor who feels obligated to support what their local board says, but we've got 14 properties up for sale today. 8 of them are either outright opposed by the local boards, or in one case, they want the proceeds from it. If we follow what the local boards are asking for, we will fail utterly to reach that target. Now, I want every councillor around here to just think for a moment. We don't reach this target, how are we going to meet our budget obligations? What services are you proposing that we should cut? What assets are you proposing we shouldn't build? And remember, the assets that we are building are assets that are vitally necessary and will create jobs and will stimulate the economy. This is an asset, perhaps. Yep, it could be regarded as an asset, but I guarantee if the local board was setting out to prioritise buying something for this use, they would not buy this property. They would not buy this property. It already has a community use. It's a community use as an early childhood education centre. And the last of those options, if we don't want to cut services, we don't want to stop building the assets we really need, is to borrow more. And we know that we're already 20 percentage points above what our debt to revenue ratio is. There are no easy alternatives to this. The other thing that I think you all need to think about, I don't know whether you get this feedback, I get it every week. There wouldn't be a week that went by where a community organisation or an ethnic group didn't ask me if council could fund an office space or a hall for them. And generally, my answer is pretty clear to them. Sorry, that's not part of the business of council. We don't purchase properties to allow ethnic or community groups to use. As soon as you create a precedent where you're doing this, you try to explain to them why we actually effectively spent, 1.65 million, because that's what we're foregoing. We spent 1.65 million for one local ward for one purpose, but we won't do it for you. Well, why will you do it for the other group if you won't do it for us? Aren't we as good as them? So you want to create that precedent, you are making an absolute rod for your own back. So I'm saying this to all of us. If we proceed as we appear to be proceeding now, I will make an exception for Waiheke because they are intending to purchase, and there is a credible belief that they will find purchasers for that. But if we proceed by turning down half of the sales that are before us today, we will absolutely fail to meet our target. Having voted for a budget, we will then fail to fund that budget, and not one councillor around this table, myself included, wants to go out and start cutting new services or assets that we're going to build or blow our debt. And that's the decision we've got to make right now. If we start down this line, we create precedents, we will absolutely fail to get that target. So it's not an easy decision to say, oh, look, you know, I would like to support Kathy Casey in this. But I know if I'm doing that, I am fundamentally breaching our ability to achieve what we've already voted on in our budget objectives. And we will have to find that money somewhere else, and it won't be painless, it'll be really painful, and it won't. What we'll be giving away are priorities that I believe are more important than the priorities set out here. So please think long and hard about what you decide to do on the sale of these assets.
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's just around the idea of going back to get staff to do a report. I don't even know who's going to be doing this report, because the reality is, if this is not in our work program and we're not looking to create office space and it's not in our community facility plans or anything like that, if it's something that the local board want, surely they need to get their community empowerment people to do it, or whatever, staff, because this is my concern. We've got rid of staff, right? So our staff are pretty stretched already. Now we're going to add another report in that isn't in their work plan, and that costs time and money. And we're just talking about that. We've been told to go back and make a plan about a consultation on a aged care centre, but now the local board is saying it's not for that. So I'm sorry, I just want clarification on what this report actually is, because it's not what was asked for 4 years ago, is not what the local board are talking about today.
Ross? You don't know?
Well, so we don't even know what we're doing. It's good. It's not Ross, is it? He's not putting forward this.
No.
It's Councillor Casey and Councillor Collins. What is the report about? Because 4 years ago it was about a seniors facility. Now the local board are talking about office space for community groups. So I just think it would be a waste of why would we do a report on something they're not saying they want now?
Do you want me to answer that, Madam Chair?
Yes, Councillor Casey, that would be handy.
Councillor Cooper, all of this would have been answered had there been engagement with the local board. There has been no engagement with the local board since 2016. So what you heard and what I heard from Margie this morning is a needs assessment has still to be done. She also told us already that the strategic broker has started a needs assessment. I'm not sure how close to finishing that is. So they are doing their bit. I think it's time to look at what's required. There is obviously a difference of opinion between the local board and from our staff. We need some evidence and support.
Okay.
I'm just going to pop a question in here. In page 53 of the agenda, Ross, it says that the Mount Eden War Memorial Hall is well located and provides versatile spaces for hire. Is it possible that the space that the local board require for this facility, which is currently not for community use, it is for as a childcare centre, that they could actually use the Mount Eden War Memorial Hall?
Through the chair, I mean, yeah, there's other community space in the area. I mean, I suppose the point that's being made, though, is are we clear on what the community need is? And, there's been a number of needs identified previously for this property. So I'm unclear myself, exactly what is the community need or the problem that we're looking to solve. And if I get clarity on that, we can then take that away and do some more work.
Okay, thank you, Ross. Councillor Dalton.
Thank you, Chair. I just wonder if we need to set some parameters just in case we get more coming through. From my perspective, something like this would be in the local board plan, and it might be an aspiration, but it would have been sitting in a local board plan for many years, and it would be in this current 3-year plan. It would have been consulted on, but there would also be, and there might be, I don't know, but there would be a line item in their work plan for the needs analysis. Local boards will do the needs analysis unless you're going through a process like the OLI, where you've had approval from the governing body and you go through, from finance and performance, and you go through the process and the regional budget is access for that. So we need, I think, to make sure we've got the correct processes in place. The work plans and the board plans are pivotal to ensuring that something gets done. If something is sitting from 2016, it needs to be driven by a local board to ensure that it's in that plan, work plan, and the appropriate council officers ask for accountability on that. I just want to make sure that local boards are very clear that they can't, if we're going to send them lists of assets and they say, but we want to hang on to that and this is our plan for it, then it should be somewhere in their plans, even dating back to 2013, and just keep rolling them forward. I just think we need some structure around that.
So are you're saying you support the disposal, therefore, because it's not?
No, I don't. No. I support the mayor.
Oh, okay. Right. Thank you. You support the mayor who was supporting the disposal?
Are you supporting the disposal? Yeah. I'm not supporting. Oh, yes, sorry. Yes, I am. Sorry.
Yes, you are supporting the mayor?
Yes, I'm supporting
Right. The disposal, sorry. Right. Gotcha. Thank you. Thank you. It has. Councillor Watson.
Yeah, thanks. And the mayor made some very good points here in terms of, what we voted for in relation to that target for asset sales. But what we also voted to was a set of principles that were to accompany this asset sales budget. And, one of the ones that was very important for me came under the heading of transparency, which went to the engagement with ward councils and local boards. So that's meant to have been an integral part of this process. Now, I can understand where, you wouldn't want to get local boards taking an obstructive line and just opposing sales for the sake of it. But that's not what's happening here. 12 of these 14 properties are going through. I can see that. This particular one here is just asking for a deferral, and I don't know the specifics of this. I haven't seen this building, but what I can see from this resolution and discussion is that there is a need to consult the local board, and if a resolution has been passed previously saying that this assessment was going to take place, well then that should happen. It doesn't mean to say this isn't going to come back for sale. What it is going to do is continue this process in good faith. So if we're just to sell everything that comes before us, why bother with the meeting? Just tick it all off. If that's to be the case, that's not what we signed up to with those principles. It was to have an element of cooperation and engagement to identify properties that the local board were on with so that we don't have this kind of dispute in the first instance. Take the easy ones first, and to ensure that we don't have a series of local boards that are alienated just because they weren't consulted or something they had been given an undertaking hasn't occurred. So to me, this is a bit of a no-brainer. You go through those two things. What comes out of that, I don't know. It might well be back on the sale list a couple of months down the line. What's the harm that's done? I don't see any harm done. And to me, that's going to be part of this process. There will be odd properties that come up that there's disagreement, and we should make a call on that, not just be some carte blanche is before us, they're gone because 240 we have to be it. That's not what we signed up to under the principle. So Ross started off with talking about balance. I agree with the mayor. We have got a tight constraint and a target, but the other side of the balance is we have to bring people along with us, not alienate them, and not when they appear to have, a reasonable cause, as in this instance.
So there have been other properties taken off because of that process. No, Ross, everyone's finished, I think. I'm going to ask you one final question. You know the process, it's been to audit and risk, and I acknowledge, Councillor, your role in that, putting that together. You've been my straw man, rather. Are you happy for the property to be disposed of as originally intended, or in your professional advice to me, do you believe in the amendment, or is your professional advice to run with the disposal?
Is this the mayor has already previously accused me of dancing on the head of a pin, and I just feel that question is another one for me, dancing the head of a pin. Yeah, it'd have to. Oh, thank you.
And the other reason the pins were very sharp.
Oh, I thought you were my friend. Yes, so to answer your question, I think, the professional advice is the property is not fit for community needs, but, I do feel what Councillor Casey is saying and Councillor Watson is saying around actually, we have agreed to principles and actually staff were asked to do something and there is an obligation, I believe staff should do what they said they would do. And I started off by saying I've been unable to find who picked up that resolution one way or the other from 2016. Thank you very much. I've got two more questions for, sorry, is that right?
A question, then right of reply.
Okay, so I've got one more question from Councillor Filipaina, then Kathy's right of reply. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question on clarification based on what I've heard. So, Ross, can you tell me, with the properties that we have any of the properties had a resolution from a committee of the whole to do something, and it hasn't been fulfilled? So that's the question of clarification, Chair, and that's based also on what you read, the resolutions. I also have them in front of me as well. But look, Ross, can you answer that? Whether any of the properties that we are currently discussing have had a resolution of council to do something and hasn't been fulfilled?
Yeah, so through the chair, of the 14 properties in front of you, we've obviously discussed about 2 Wiremu Street. 80 Vincent Street was previously considered by the Finance and Performance Committee, and a decision was made not to dispose of it. There was no, but we brought it back because actually no one's managing that piece of that property now, which is an at-grade park. So we brought that back, and I said the local board now supports that, but none of the other properties have had any resolutions that I'm aware of.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Casey. I've just been told there's no right of reply on an amendment, so I will take the amendment to a vote. It's got a mover and a seconder.
A very quick question, Madam Chair.
Sorry, yes, who's that?
Councillor Fletcher.
Councillor Fletcher, question.
When this matter last came before this committee, I asked the question that the origin to this particular property is that it was purchased by the then mayor, the late Gordon Johns, and I wanted to know for what purpose was it purchased, and that was to come back as well. So is Ross able to tell me at this stage what the answer to that was? Why did Gordon Johns advance the purchase of that property at that time?
Through the chair, I have actually read that in the files, but I'd rather come back to you with the specific answer. But I have seen the property report which talks about when it was required by the then Eden Borough Council and for what purpose, but I just can't recall, sorry. Right, thank you. I'm now going to take it to the vote. A division has been called by Member Wilcox. I'll ask our Kai Tohu Mana Whakahaere Mātua to take the division. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You're voting on the amendment, which is on the screen. Mayor Goff?
No.
Deputy Mayor Cashmore?
No.
Councillor Bartley?
Sorry, missed that, Councillor. Councillor Bartley, are you there?
I think I badly did to say 4. No, I'm
Councillor
joking.
Bartley, are you there? Hold on. She said yes voting, but what are you voting? Are you voting for?
She voted yes on the sidebar.
I'm voting for. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Blair?
Is this for the amendment to Wiremu Street?
Correct.
I'm abstaining.
Councillor Casey?
Yes.
Councillor Collins?
For.
Councillor Cooper?
Against.
Councillor Dalton?
Against.
Councillor Darby.
Against.
Councillor Filipina.
Aye.
Councillor Fletcher.
For.
Councillor Henderson.
Against.
Councillor Hills.
Oh, I don't know.
Come on, councillor, make a decision.
Against.
Councillor Mulholland.
For.
Councillor Sayers.
Against.
Councillor Stewart.
Against.
Member Wilcox.
Kia ora, Glenn. You there?
Councillor Walker. Yes. Councillor Watson. Councillor Young.
For.
Councillor Simpson. Carried 10-9.
Right, let's go back to the substantive. We have a mover and a seconder. Take it to the vote. We've got... Right. Can we take this to the vote, or are there still questions and debate? To the vote? Yes. Got a question?
Yes, I do. So I just want to go back to West Coast Road here, and I've brought up the Greenways plan from the Waitakere Rangers local board. Now, this to me is forming evidence that actually the board do have plans for that bit of land. On the east-west link here, it says that it is a priority, and I'm glad that that is there. But I'm assuming this has been consulted. There is a northern access way here where no current route exists, but it's a proposed route, but it's not a priority route in the plan. So I guess I just kind of want to see what can be done and try and work with staff around the desire of the local board on a northern access point. So I suppose it's kind of a comment question. I'm wondering whether we can kind of, at the very least, discuss that in the future.
Not sure if there's a question there or not. Yeah, so I'll take it as a comment.
Okay.
Right. Any more comments or questions? Councillor Watson. John, can you turn your microphone?
And I've listened to them twice now, and to me this is another example here where there is a possibility of some, I think, some good outcome that might take on board. There might be a compromise here, is what I'm saying. And I think Councillor Henderson has alluded to that in terms of this connections, particularly to the main road. I mean, there's no doubt that the intensification that's taking place there is very significant. And it's a little bit like the park and ride from my perspective. When I was talking about the park and ride, that was built in 2005. We need more now. We're 2020. They're taking a similar view in terms of the open space that has this degree of intensification that, you know, that is very significant. So they're looking for their best outcome. Now, I think in amongst all that, there could be the possibility here where there's a bit of quid pro quo. That might go some way to allaying the local board's concerns, while also maybe conceivably allowing, you know, some disposal of a lesser part than perhaps we originally thought, but with no big overall loss, other than the risk of loss of goodwill, where in my view anyway, a compelling case has been presented by the local board. Now, I don't know if that holds any water with the rest of the members around here, but out of all of them, this was the one that struck a chord with me, and I don't know if Councillor Henderson was suggesting there that there be, you know, some ability to defer for a set period of time to see if something could be worked out in terms of that access way.
I think if I heard rightly, I think the answer to that was that it would be, we'd approve it for sale, and in that sale, we'd take that in consideration and hope that the development took that in, yes, yeah.
Yeah.
All right?
All right, so, so if that's the line that is to be taken, fair enough, but that's one that's sort of full of uncertainty as far as I'm concerned, and doesn't really address the submission that was made to us, but that's my view.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Walker.
I just want to support Councillor Henderson. I've also visited this site, and I agree with all the comments he's made. We need to ensure going forward in areas where there is intensification that we have links, greenways and the like, rather than just flog things off. I would have thought that was an imperative. So I'm understanding then that will be taken into account in the sale, or is the alternative to try and vote it down? How does that work, Ross?
Right, so through the chair, well, the decision rests with the committee. I mean, the discussions with the local board on this piece of land have been ongoing in 4 years. I'm trying to think, because I gave Councillor Henderson the timeline for this earlier, and there's been, discussions around actually how that piece of land is used. 50% is being retained to get the green links. But the other portion I said earlier, is actually if you create a development opportunity, you need to make sure you've got access to there. But it would be in a developer's best interest to link any development with the green space around it, but that would be, part of any future development plan.
Comment from Councillor Cooper.
Thank you. I will weigh in as the local councillor. The reality about this piece of land is actually adjacent to another intense development, so it actually makes sense to put that in there. But the really great thing about this is a compromise. We've got a substantial piece of land there, but going to be a park, which I think will be critical for the people that live there. So they'll already get a park. And the other issue around here is that if you take away all that frontage, which is very narrow, for a park or a greenway, you will have no access for the residents. So we've got to be careful what we wish for. And I do think that this can be worked out with the local board and with the developers and with Panuku to find a satisfactory outcome here. Otherwise, this is really a waste of land. We had some conversations earlier around, we've got a lot of intensification already. Well, the reason it's really good to intensify here, it's within a couple of 100 metres of a railway station. That's the really exciting part about it. It's within walking distance to a primary school. It's within walking distance to the shops. It's within walking distance to a library. It makes sense to build houses here with a park alongside and the greenway going through it. So I've got no problem about selling this. We are desperate for housing out west. We have some of the longest waiting lists for housing in New Zealand. There might be an opportunity for Kāinga Ora to go to do some of this, or a community housing group, anybody. And I think that in our community, affordable housing, that's what we really need. We've got a lot of parks. We've got the whole Waitakere Ranges. We've got the huge, even the cemetery. It's not a playground, but people use that for walking a lot. It's going to be part of the greenway. So I've got no worries about selling this. Earlier it was going to be the whole thing. Now it's only half. So I think it's been a really good compromise. And I'm not afraid to vote for this, because I also supported asset sales in the emergency budget. And this is about being brave, not trying to make friends, to be quite honest, for me. This is about being brave and being able to deliver on our budget and at the same time create a park in that community and the greenway. I think we can have it all.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Henderson.
Thanks, Chair, for your forbearance. I thought I'd just add a comment and just to say that I agree with Councillor Cooper, and also just want to echo the words of Mayor Goff in the previous debate, and actually just say that I agree completely, and his kōrero around the necessity for what we're doing in terms of sales, unfortunately, is true. Everyone that knows me and knows my values knows that I don't like selling things. I don't like selling any of this stuff. But this is the situation of what we have to do. But also I think Councillor Cooper makes a very good point that actually in West Auckland we have a housing crisis like no other. We've got huge Housing New Zealand wait list. At one point we were the largest in the country in West Auckland. We have huge and growing populations of homelessness in our town centres throughout Henderson, throughout Glen Eden. So in the previous debate we had around here, I remember I did say something around the bravery that we have to show sometimes around housing. And I just remember that this is the sort of thing we've got to be brave about. But having said that, I want to reiterate what I've been driving at and just say that I also agree with the Waitakere Rangers Local Board completely, wholeheartedly. I think we should be looking at access, if at all possible, through to West Coast Road, because we've got a history of building over access points that is really tragic for local communities. So I want to work with staff on this, but I will be supporting it. Thank you.
Kia ora, thank you. Right, with no further questions or comments, it's been moved and second. I've had no division, so I'll take it to the vote. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against?
Aye.
Against.
Yes, we've got, that was Councillor Stewart. Remember, she wants her for. Councillor Young,
Only because
I want for, but I put a note.
It's the same, thank you.
I've got you guys, thank you.
Thank you.
Right, moved and seconded and taken on the voices, so I take that as passed. Thank you. Right, item 12. I'll move. Do I have a seconder?
Seconder.
Thank you, Councillor Casey. It's just the information report. All those in favour say aye. Against, carried. There's no extraordinary business. Now just move to exclude the public. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Darby. All those in favour say aye. Right. 5-minute break, thank you.
Everyone has to leave this call and join the...
Sorry, just reminding everybody they have to hang up